Okay, we're going to kick off. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. It's the second in a series of young learner focused webinars that MEI is hosting as sort of a build up, I suppose, to a young learner agent workshop that we're hosting next week, the 7th of February. So if you haven't already registered for the young learner workshop, that's still open if you're interested to meet some agents from all over the world that are interested to send students, young learner students to Ireland. I think we've got about 50 agents signed up for that event, so expecting it to be quite a busy event. But yeah, as I said, we wanted to put on some extra activities to sort of get people thinking and talking about young learners and their specific needs. So today we have Peter Lahiff, who's the Future Learning Academic Director, and he's going to talk to us about being as inclusive as possible of students with special needs in summer language courses. I suppose it's a challenge, I'm sure, that you're facing in your schools all the time. So it'll be great to hear Peter's experience of managing this and the ways that Future Learning have best accommodated students in difficult scenarios. Just to give a little bit of background on Peter, Peter works on the development and management of a project based in technology enhanced language courses for young learners and adults at Future Learning, where he has been the academic director since 2013. He's a founding committee member and former president of ELT Ireland, the Irish network of English language teaching professionals. So I'm going to hand you over now to Peter to begin the presentation, about 45 minutes, and then we've got some Q&A at the end. So thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Lorcan, and to Keith as well for the invitation to present on this. I was going to say that it was 20 years since I was first involved in a summer language course, but then I did some maths and I realized it was probably 25 years since that. So I'm not coming from this as an expert in special needs. I'm definitely not that, but it's more about the practicalities of understanding and incorporating students with special needs, and they're kind of a small but significant percentage of the students that you'll get in any summer language courses. So it's something that over the years we've had to consider and find accommodations for. So that's the topic of the talk today, to share experience around that and maybe invite some discussion as well from others about what can be done and where the limitations might be. So a bit of context kind of first needed. The school that have been involved in since we started in 2013 is Future Learning, and our mission was to run project-based technology enhanced programs from the start, and starting with young learners, and now we run an adult program as well in Dublin and Athlone. And so the next question then is going to be, well, what does project-based mean? And that's something that is bandied around quite a lot, and students, especially students on summer courses, have always done projects in one way or another. But what is different about our approach to that is that it is the core organizing principle of all of our courses. It's not an additional activity or an add-on or something to do at the end of the week. So here's some of the projects that we would run with our young learners, obviously adapted to age and level and their areas of interest. And if they're coming on a short course, like a 1 week mini-stay program, the whole time is dedicated to working together on that project and developing a product which they will then present and describe the process of. So that's the context. summer courses are a bit longer, but they similar principles are applied there. So that's the kind of important kind of context for the incorporation of and inclusiveness that I'm going to talk about here as part of this presentation. So yeah, there's our four summer young learner centres in Ireland, east, west, middle, north, or northwest, I suppose, when you're talking about Sligo. And this summer, we're going to reopen a program again in London, where we were before Brexit, and that's also part of this part of our summer programs. So it's always very important to have your corporate mission, and here that kind of explains again who we are and the context in which we're trying to include people with special needs. So yeah, using the power of projects and technology as a tool to explore, engage with, and communicate a rich and authentic experience of the world with its different cultures and languages. So I always think that the mission, even before you start thinking about special needs, the mission is inclusive in English language teaching because of the intercultural element and the range of language backgrounds and nationalities that we bring together, and we help to feel included and to feel part of the one program. Our aim is to be unique in what we do and change how people see language learning. So especially when it comes to summer courses, the standard thing is, yeah, we'll do a few language games every morning, and then we'll go to a museum and play a bit of football, and that's going to be the program. But our effort is to try and integrate the whole thing together and have the sessions in the morning help the students articulate and describe the experience that they're getting in the afternoon. And our focus of the summer program is on STEAM related topics, so bringing stuff into the language classroom from other subject areas, and having that bit of content integration is also key. And then we want to open their minds to the full range of skills they need to collaborate effectively. So because it's project work, collaboration is the key, working together with people with different abilities, different needs to achieve a common goal. So that's why I'm going to have to set that context here from the start. And different interests and expertises, if you can make that a plural, as well. And so, yeah, the other skills are, okay, yeah, you need to know a bit of you need your language knowledge, but your first obvious skill is communication, but communication without anybody else there is just a monologue. So you're going to collaborate and communicate. And when you're collaborating with people, well, you're going to be solving problems, whether those are the problems that collaboration in and of itself brings up, or problems that you're working together on in the context of the project. So there's your creative problem solving. And then because we're bringing technology into the picture, then digital information and media skills are also going to be a key part of it. So that's what we mean by the full range of skills. Yeah, this is not just language as an abstract knowledge, but it's something that is a tool and a medium. So that's the mission. And then you have to know what your values are behind that mission. And this is something that we sat down with our team, and we kind of played around with lots of different adjectives and verbs and tried to identify what it is that we how we would define our mission. And we came up with these 5 phrases: passion for learning, yeah, we're we're keen to see the students learn and to find ways for that to work as well as possible for them. Constant improvement. We're not going to sit back and say, yeah, we have that sorted now. We don't need to make it any better. And the same with the students. You've achieved the task at a minimum level. You don't need to work any harder on it. And we're pushing ourselves and pushing the students. So values are two-way things. It's not just values for other people. Yeah, the values are there for yourself as the school, as the teacher, and they are the values as well that you want to impart to the student. Working well together, yeah, for us as a team, but also for the students. And again, that inclusiveness is the key thing there. Creative innovation. So we want our students to be creative and to try new things, but we also aim to be creative and innovative in our programs. And supportive inclusiveness, that's kind of the focus here. That we welcome everybody in and we support them in being part of the group, part of the team, part of the class. And so that's where we're focusing the attention on in this context. So thinking about this and how I might make it real, because again, I'm not an expert in special needs, so I don't think it's helpful for me to kind of make definitions and that kind of technical discourse on what are special needs and what isn't and what we can do about it. So what I did really was have a think back to the various different types of special needs that we have come across outside what you might call the mainstream of learning needs, and try to make it real with a case study, a particular student or a particular case that we had to look at and think about, and what we might do about it. So I kind of made a list of the 5 kind of areas of needs that we had come across and would come across on a reasonably regular basis. And found some case studies which I have obviously anonymized and no personal details, but that I wanted to share with you. So my plan is here to go through those case studies, to share the way that we tackled it, and then give you a proposal for a general policy, which obviously is the key when you're managing a school or managing a summer programs. You have to think about what policy are you going to set for this, for your team, when it comes to dealing with these kind of challenges. And then happy to open the discussion and hear what anybody else would like to share from their own experiences about dealing with this sort of thing. So here is the first one, where you have a student who has some kind of motor disability, capable of independent travel using a specially equipped bus from home to school to commute. That's kind of what the student's kind of general life involves. And then for mobility, uses a self-propelled wheelchair, but definitely needs access to a wheelchair accessible bathroom and a shower in the accommodation. The student can dress herself, wash herself independently, but needs spaces without architectural barriers at home, residence, school, transport. So as we were thinking about this case, well, it's very important that the student is independent and able to get around by themselves. If not, obviously there needs to be somebody there to help. with that kind of element of getting around. And because our summer programs are run in modern purpose-built educational facilities, whether they are university or secondary schools, in general, they are set up to have wheelchair access. So that element of it, I wasn't worried about. And when it comes to the accommodation, the residents would be the main kind of option there, as we have a modern residence in Dublin and in Galway. Again, they're fit out for accessibility, and there is a unit with a disabled accessible bathroom and shower within that. So I felt we could solve that problem. Probably we could even find a host family that might have an accessible bathroom or shower, but then it's a bit more difficult because the concern was about the getting to and from, about the transport element, and how do we solve that aspect of the needs here. And so either you need to be on campus, very close to campus, and getting to and from there quite easily, or using public transport. In Dublin, I would say the public transport is reasonably accessible, Lewis and bus and so on. The problem would come when you're looking at coaches and these kind of buses for excursions. Generally, they're not accessible. And so you're looking at, well, for that student, obviously, we want to accept them and involve them as much as possible. Do we have to say, well, you can have the whole program, but not the excursions? Or are we looking at kind of, can they be carried on and off the bus, and who would do that? You know, that's probably a difficult thing to try and organize or ask people to do. And then even the transfer to and from the airport, a wheelchair accessible taxi would be required for that, not the normal coach that would take them. So those were the limitations, but we felt we could solve it. Just we'd need something. We wouldn't be able to send them on the Saturday excursions in most cases. But the rest of the program, we were confident we could find a way to do it and to incorporate those needs into the program. Next one was dyslexia, and I always feel that this is something that everybody thinks they know what it means, but in reality, there's a lot more to it than that. And I was very glad to hear from Keith that they're planning a talk on dyslexia that will kind of get more into the details and the technicalities of it than I am able to. But yeah, here's a typical request that we have from a student who knows about their own dyslexia, and this student was focused on the difficulties they were having in learning to write. So speaking not a problem, and able to take part in the oral aspect of lessons and learn from mistakes and try and repair them, everything that you would expect. And so that's why the teacher then would overlook the fact that they weren't picking up or having difficulty with the learning to write, because the spoken presentation of the students was so good, and the other was the written production was surprisingly poor in comparison. And so the question of what was going on there, and this was the explanation that the student was able to give about that. And obviously she felt very discouraged, and that she wasn't getting anywhere with it. But had the determination to try and tackle it and to take the advice and support that we were able to give in order to be able to take part. So this was an issue not with taking part in the class or being involved in the class. The student was well able to do that, but it was with her own goal of improving her written skills was something that she wasn't getting from the normal run of classes, despite her ability to participate almost fully, aside from that limitation. What we ended up doing here was to give the student access to the material in advance, and some strategies for preparing for the activities that were going to be done in the class, so that she was kind of ready ahead of time and able to kind of perform at least as well as the classmates in those particular activities. In the end, it did require some one-to-one sessions with a teacher to be able to kind of help her get over the barrier with the writing skills. That she found the advance look at the material in a format that she was able to manage very useful, but wasn't able to really crack it on her own, and so needed a little bit of one-to-one time with the teacher for a couple of weeks to be able to get over that. That's something that schools find it very difficult to organize, and it's not something that I would say, yeah, we definitely can do that, because yeah, in this case it was possible to provide that additional support, but the teacher's job is to teach the whole class, and so that's where you get a bit of tension in trying to accommodate these things. Some of the strategies that are needed for dyslexia, I would think, are generally good English language learning strategies anyway. So like if a class is being well run and well managed, the advice is about, piece of advice about making sure that the instructions are clear and are visible. They're not just given quickly and then gone, that they're checked, the student is able to follow the steps, and those kind of things about dyslexia are I think good practice for English language teaching. But the problem also for us is that as a technology enhanced language school, the distraction that comes from the way an application is set up is very hard to control, because yeah, we're using generally accessible real world applications as opposed to ones that are specially constructed for educational purposes. So that's again a limitation in the things we could do for somebody who has that difficulty to focus on the written word. So in some ways, using technology in education can help. You can have your change of color, change of font size, change of contrast, and those kind of techniques and strategies that can help them to focus. That can be done quite easily, but the removal of distractions, the controls and all of the other instructions around the screen can be very hard to manage, because you don't have that kind of control over the format of applications if you're using a technology enhanced approach. So next case study is one on visual impairment, and we've had blind students who have come, and they have had devices that can read text to them and allow them to produce text, and they can participate in that way. And so those cases, I suppose, are less when you think visual impairment, you think, oh, you got a blind student, they need a reading aid or something that will help them access the written word. But the more complicated case that I kind of want to put forward here is one to do with them student who had a visual impairment that meant that they couldn't deal with strong light. I mean, what we would consider normal levels of light was blindingly bright for them. So what the student was asking for was a completely dark room with the blinds closed. And the difficulty then was with the other students. The teacher felt, yeah, they all said it was fine, they agreed, but then their energy levels were low when the room was dark, and it affected student engagement. So that's where you're trying to balance the needs of one student against the needs of the whole group. And it was quite a difficult one to try and resolve. The student also needed some extra support related to the use of technology, logging on and so on. And, you know, that was a kind of a separate thing to the actual visual impairment as well, which made it quite a challenge for the student to try and look after all their students. And so what we had to do in this case was we had to have a chat with this particular student and say, look, you cannot ask the teacher to help you all the time or in every moment, because the teacher has to balance their availability to all of the students. And so sometimes you would have to wait for the help that you need, or you would have to arrive early, be there to ask your questions to help get set up so that you're ready to go when everyone else is there. You cannot arrive late and then expect the teacher to be able to give the same level of support. So that kind of trade-off or negotiation is very important. You know, that we can help you up to this point, but then we need to do something from your side so that we can make it work for everybody. The issue with the dark room was also something that was difficult for us to resolve. The student had their own device and was able to manage the contrast and brightness of that, for example, but we agreed to kind of half closing the blinds so that was no direct glare, and positioned the student in the more shaded part of the room. It was still not comfortable for them. You know, that the student was not entirely happy with that, but that was again the compromise that we had to make here, and yeah, we had to explain that to the student. The other thing about this case was that the information we got in advance was very limited. That the agent told us that the student has visual impairment and needs their own device in the class to be able to read the text, which was fine. We understood that, but then the thing about needing to reduce the overall light level of the class, and that was not flagged or mentioned in advance. So it was something that we had to kind of deal with on the fly, as opposed to be able to plan it in advance. And that's often what can happen with the special needs, is that the person making the booking is unwilling to kind of tell you too much about it, because they don't want you to refuse the student, which would not be our approach anyway. You know, our aim is to include students and include their needs as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, that is the fear, as I understand it. Auditory impairment. I mean, this one was quite straightforward, because the student had the problem really with the listening part of the exam, and we were able to apply to the exam board, which is Trinity College London in our case, and get extra consideration for them. So sometimes it's about exploring, what consideration is available, how can we access it, or help the student to do so. So other cases of auditory impairment that I have seen is where the student has a special device that connects to it goes into their ears, and they ask the teacher to wear a microphone to help with that. That works very well for a lecture where the teacher is talking most of the time, but where there's a lot of interaction and collaboration, those devices are not helpful because obviously they pick up all the background noise, and so that was something that having the team and the group help the student understand what was the instruction or what was being said was necessary. That the person close to them could explain it, whereas the teacher from a distance, that's what they had trouble picking up. So those kind of accommodations then is what you are able to make. Yeah, this one is a difficult one, and I kind of put the request here because I think it gives really the picture of the complexity of the need. And I know that a student who has an eating disorder is not considered really a special educational need, but in a summer program, you're responsible for the whole student, their whole day and their whole life, and what they do in class and what they do beyond that. And so this student, you can see that has been getting treatment and therapy for an eating disorder, and felt able to manage it, and that was very much looking forward to taking a summer course with an international program with international students. And the consideration that we have to make then is, okay, if the student is staying with the host family, and that's where the question of what food are they getting and are they eating it is being managed, it's not something that we could ask our host families really to take on. They don't have the expertise in that, and we all know that with the best will in the world, international students don't always love the host family style of cooking. So, that added to this was a concern that we had, and even in the residential program, to be kind of away from home, away from your supports, away from your familiar routine, and that it seemed to be a bit much of an ask. And so we decided in this case, together with the agent, that because it was quite recent for the student, that we wouldn't recommend they take it on. And that was possible because we got very good information from the agent, and we were able to discuss it and explain it in a way that showed that it was with the student's best interest in mind that we were recommending that. And that's the thing, that we are not psychologists or experts in that area, and students that need a lot of support, whether it's eating disorder, or I put self-harm there, in a broadest sense, people who need students who need psychological support, we are not the people who are equipped to do that for them. And there I have come across a case where when that emerged during the course and we weren't given the information in advance, and the parents said because they didn't want the student to be refused the opportunity to have this experience, we had to recommend that the student go home because uh, we were not equipped to look after their welfare in that case. And so that was something that we struggled with that decision. The student wanted to stay, but we had to consider, like, what if um, the situation doesn't improve, and then we're not able to help them in time. So that is what can happen with that kind of case. Next one here, I put autism spectrum, and I know it has had different names at different times, but I think this is the most common name for it now. And here is kind of a typical description of that kind of student. And yeah, we're always happy to welcome this kind of student as long as they have strategies that will help them to manage in classes. So if they do it at home, they're in a normal class with other students and they're able to know how to deal with it, then they can do it here with us in the same way. If they need a help or an assistant at home, they would need that same kind of help or assistance here. They would have to bring that with them because we're not in a position to provide specialist help or support, but we're happy to accommodate it. But it is important for the team to know that a student who seems to be unwilling to engage or very kind of refusing to speak or participate or collaborate might need a bit of time, a bit of space, rather than being pushed into something that they're not comfortable with. And so a bit of awareness raising with the staff there is very important. And we have students like this. It's not unusual. Often they are, say very little and don't participate in the early days of a course. But once they find the routine and they understand the schedule and they understand that it's what's coming, then they can do very well in the program, especially because our summer program has an element of it which is an individual e-portfolio, which students can work on by themselves. It's their own kind of personal website. And students who are not great with the collaborative side of project work can also have an opportunity to shine with that side of it. So I think that's a very good balance that we've found there between and the collaborative and the group activities and the individual work in our summer programs. So that's something that awareness raising in the staff is very important, and knowing it in advance really helps. And once we do, we're almost always able to accommodate and to see that student flourish on the summer program. So that's a good one. Okay, so then this is my kind of concluding, wrapping up of all of that, and then we can kind of open it up to discussion, questions, or yeah, whatever you would like to make of it. The question is, what's the policy? So what policy are you going to set, and explain that to your agents and partners and to your team is very important. So what we have come to as our policy is the following: that it is our policy to incorporate students with needs, special needs, yeah, into the mainstream of the course and incorporate their strategies into the normal running of classes as much as possible. There are limitations. There are things that you say, we can't do that and look after the whole class at the same time. So that's the tension there. But if they're coming to us and saying, look, I need to do things this way, or I have this strategy, I have this device, I have this method, I might need extra time here and there. We're happy to incorporate their strategies into the running of the class and the course. But, and this is the second point here, that we are not experts in special needs. And we are not equipped to devise strategies where they do not already exist. So where somebody's coming to us and saying, I have this student with special needs, they've never been in this context before, they've never had to cope with it before, can you help them to find a way to do it? I would be unwilling to say yes, because an international summer program, they're there for 2 weeks, they're in and they're gone. There isn't time to really kind of deal with that properly. And so that's the line that I would draw. Well, always welcoming people who come to us and saying, I have this need, I have this strategy, I need, and they know what they're asking us to do. We will facilitate that as much as possible. Why? Because the teacher has to serve the needs of all the students in the class equally, whatever their particular needs. And that's the tension for the teacher. And we have to take care not to overstretch the teacher in that, and what they're able to do. The thing about collaborative projects are that it allows students to shine in the areas where they are best at and get peer support in the areas where they are weaker. So there's a classic case of students with visual impairment, or who don't like to stand up in front of the group and present with their autism, or even they're very shy, that there's a way to negotiate that with the group so that the student contributes what they have to contribute to the project gets done, the group then presents the work. And so there's a strong element of supporting each other, which that brings. And then, as I mentioned before, the having an individual task as well, and individual, whether that's a notebook or a diary, or whatever way you do it on your particular course, there's an important balance there. It can't be all collaborative all the time. It has to be a balance with some individual work, where the student who doesn't do well with collaboration can show their strengths. So there'll always be some tasks in a project that students find challenging, but what helps is that they are not tackling these tasks alone. Yeah, so for the collaboration. So that is the kind of the overview, and from the point of view of someone who's been involved in summer programs for many years, but again, not an expert in these areas. So I'd like to open it up then and ask any questions, or does anybody want to open their own microphone and share some cases that they would have dealt with along these lines, or have solutions that I haven't thought of, which is also possible. Don't be shy now.
Hi, Peter. I'll say something to add to the discussion.
Thanks.
Okay, so I've got a similar experience to you in like managing summer schools, and I do agree with you that there's often cases when the people who send the students don't want to disclose what conditions they have. It might be for cultural reasons or whatever. And then what would you say in the case of, okay, we want to make the classroom as inclusive as possible, but we also need to be careful not to kind of put the spotlight on that student so that everyone recognizes them as, oh, that's the dyslexic one, or that's the student with autism. Have you found like good ways to kind of have you ever kind of had systems where you find out how comfortable the student feels with having special treatment or not, whether the student wants to be integrated and it not to be mentioned? Is that something that you often discuss?
Um, that's a good point. I think that if you can prepare in advance and you can alert the teacher, you can do a better job of this than if it's a surprise. Obviously, you're where you haven't been told, and the teachers come back to you at the second day of classes saying, "I think this particular student is not participating for a reason. Can we try and find out some more about that?" Um, my advice would be don't push it like to the teacher. My advice would be don't push it. If the student needs a bit of time, give them a bit of time, and then we'll try to find out what we can to inform us about the right strategy. And having a chat with the student away from the spotlight would often be part of that. So I think there's no one size fits all kind of a solution. You're relying on the teachers to have their antennas out, spot the issues that haven't been disclosed to us, and then letting them know, look, we're not going to be preemptive here. We're trying to have a chat with the student, have a chat with the group leader. What information can we get from the parents, and devise a strategy there together. Um,
And
I
I was
think
just, sorry, I was just going to say also, because we've thought about this from the teacher perspective quite a lot, right? And let's imagine we've got, you might have the activity staff as well and other like kind of staff who may not be that students teach directly, but it could be useful for them to know certain information. I found last year one of the issues I had. So I had like a long document with student names, information, who had what, and I had the dilemma of, okay, am I going to share this with all the staff so they know all the cases of each student in case they crop up in their sports session, in their lesson, in an excursion, or does that kind of infringe on GDPR as well? So that element came into it. So I was wondering what advice you might have on that as well.
um, yeah, the kind of need to know thing as well.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's general advice to say about special needs and strategies that you might use to deal with it and how you might recognize it, so that the teachers are, or sorry, the activity leaders are aware that such things can arise. But especially if you're like doing an activity where you've got 20 different students every day, you're not going to be able to keep track of that. So I suppose
Mhm.
you're going to have to go to them, say to them, look, what you need to know about this particular group is that student there, on a need to know as they need to know it. Now, I suppose you've got different types of activity leaders, and some of them are with the group all the time and really kind of have a different kind of relationship. But if you have the guy who's doing I don't know, in Ireland it's Gaelic sports, right? There's the guy who's doing Gaelic sports has a different group of students every day. You're not going to be able to give him a big database and expect him to go through it. So I suppose the bit of both uh, general information for the staff so that they know generally what can arise, and then specific information for those who are closest to them.
Thanks.
The thing that occurs to me though, Paul, and maybe you have some insight into this as well, is other students generally are good about it.
Yeah.
I've never come across it where the students are going, "What's going on with this guy?" They're generally the best about it.
No, I am very impressed with like, and as you say, like how nice young people are with these things these days. Just going back to my own school days where this type of thing didn't always happen. People weren't so accepting of different students. But I have found that even within a classroom, if a teacher proposes a different way of doing stuff to suit a particular student's needs, I think a lot of the other classmates, they're kind of on board with that. And you're right that it's kind of a, I've seen it where we've had the students in wheelchair once, and all the students were happily ready to like, okay, they didn't participate like 100% like the rest of them, but there were phases during certain sessions when we tried to get the student involved in activities, for example, and all the other students were like really good with it. So yeah, I think thankfully summer schools often have that environment where they are very accepting of people around them with special needs. And then as usual, if they're not, I guess it just requires a little bit of a talking to those students that may not be accepting of it, and just remind them, look, we need to be a bit more tolerant and accepting of our classmates, right?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the values at the start, that if you're kind of set that as a we, that is all the staff and all the students share these values, and it's included in that, then that's something you can reinforce and then deal with it if it gets contravened. Okay.
Yeah, and especially even in like induction, like that first day when you talk to them all, and then even that first day in the classroom, a little bit on tolerance of each other, whether it be learning disabilities, cultural backgrounds, things like that. I think it's always worth with young people laying out the rules and the expectations, and then they're not going to bend them, right? So
yeah, no, they're generally very good at rules. Surprisingly good at rules. It's funny once they're clearly explained to them. Yeah, okay, thanks a million. Anybody else want to throw in a couple of pence worth there? Even to say, yeah, that sounds about right for me from my experience too. Kieran, I see you there. I might call you out. How did you find that
No,
explanation?
I think at present, I was interested in this, Peter, because while we're not involved in the summer school at the moment, we've had one or two situations with special needs students over the last couple of months, and it is with the adult students, it's a little bit more difficult because sometimes they get a bit annoyed about a student with maybe autism needs, who needs more attention, being very demanding in the class, and we're struggling with that at the moment. So we're basically thinking about this stuff at the moment and trying to figure out how we're going to handle it for adult students, because I think it is a bit easier in the summer school because you can. The teenagers are used to there being very strict rules, and that policy is policy and this is how you must behave. With adults, it's a little bit more difficult. So we're pondering how to manage it and how to make it, because that is something that's come up, is the students feel that the teacher is giving extra time to a particular student and they are missing out because of that.
Yeah, no, that's the tension that I've come across as well. And having a policy that says we're going to do as much as possible, but these things are not possible, is the secret. Okay. I think we've got everybody's input there. Dorcan, do you want to draw to a close?
Perfect. Yeah. So thanks very much, Peter. It's very instructive. And really interesting to get the case studies of how you've managed different situations in future learning. And as we've heard from Paul and Kiran, lots of other different experiences in other schools, but a similar threads throughout. So I suppose a human-focused approach and kind of clear, inclusive policies can go a long way. And kind of once you've set that culture within your own environment, whether that's a junior school environment or an adult school environment, that can go a long way. So yeah, thanks for that. Lots of food for thought.